Hi, everybody. So today we are here with Lindsay, who joined us not last week, but the week before, and our friend Lila, who I met through Lindsay, who lives in Minneapolis, and she is joining us to talk about a lot of different stuff. So, hi, Lila. How are you doing today?
I am all right.
Yeah, it sounds like
Just
you had,
surviving the pandemic and now the multiple things happening.
yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot, and I imagine it's a lot to live in Minneapolis for this stuff. How are you, Lindsay?
I'm good. I'm pretty much, you know, just still hanging here in Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
Things are also a little crazy, but
Yeah,
I feel like
I
that's everywhere.
yeah. I saw a chart today, not to brag, but that Illinois was the has the largest decrease in coronavirus
I also saw
cases.
that.
Yeah, so
You know,
you're all.
doing your part.
Yeah, I was like, oh wow, this is the first time I've been proud to live here. Um, All right, cool. Well, Lila, this is how I start all of my interviews. Do you want to tell the listeners how we met? Do you remember the first time we met?
I have a terrible memory, but I think we met at Lindsay's bachelorette party, if
That's
I
what
recall
I
accurately.
that's what I decided too, is that like I'm sure we knew of each other for a really long time. So Lila is Lindsay's like longest, oldest friend, I guess unless you're counting your sister. Um,
Yeah, I
we were
mean,
both
Lila and I have been best friends since the like middle of fourth grade, I think.
Yeah.
Isn't that cute? Isn't that nice? I have one friend like that also. Actually, she just graduated from graduate school in conservation biology yesterday.
Nice.
Yes, that's my version of Lila. But yeah, I think that's right. I think that we met at Lindsay's bachelor party and then ended up agreeing to co-sleep in the bed and be roommates.
You should
Because
have gone to sleep together.
um, yes, so that I don't know. Yeah, and that is that. Besides that and Lindsay's wedding, that might be the only times we've actually met in person. Yeah.
I believe so, yeah.
Um, do you consider yourself like a political person?
I would say more than most people that I know.
Yeah, I
So,
think
yeah,
I'd agree with that. I mean,
Me too.
just by the stuff that I see you posting, I'm like, oh, Lila knows what's going on all the time, which is good. Um, okay, I I want to ask about a couple different things, of course, but is there anything that you want to share about what it's been like to live in Minneapolis since George Floyd's death on May 25th?
I would say, I mean, the brief overview was I, it's been a blur. It's really
Yeah.
been a blur. And I thought time had no meaning during COVID, and then this all happened, and every day was crazy. Um, I read the news every day, the local news, but again, media can be biased. So, and I've had friends who like went to protest or like went to the vigil that was held on Tuesday, like the day after that happened, and it like the unrest just grew, and I think it's valid.
Mm-hmm.
And I think living here too, just being one of the first place where this all started, I turned off looking at other news and other cities just to focus day by day what was happening here.
Mm-hmm.
Just because specifically in the local neighborhoods here, some very crazy stuff that isn't really covered by national news is happening, which was pretty scary to live near. Um, you'll have to go back to what your question was.
Oh, I just said, is there anything that you want to share about what it's like to live in Minneapolis since then? But like now that you mentioned that, there was definitely a lot of stuff that I learned from your Instagram that I didn't learn from national news at all. I mean, wasn't there, where do you live? Like, you live in the city, right?
I live in the city, so I guess we can get back to your question, but as like a brief overview setting it up is like I live on the west side of the city, and the 3rd precinct where those 4 police officers were based out of are on the east side of the 3rd precinct. But I do live near a precinct, so on Thursday, that's when they took the 3rd precinct in the evening, but that started around like the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a friend who lives over in that area as well, and a few school teachers who their schools are over there, so their students are based over there. And I was able to watch a lot of it on Unicorn Riot, so like the wee hours of night on Thursday. And then on Friday, that's when a big group of protesters came towards the 5th precinct, and I saw that firsthand. And I can go into it if you'd like.
Oh yeah, I would love to. Would you mind explaining what Unicorn Riot is?
I was just going to say, plug for Unicorn Riot, because Lila told me about it too, and I used it the whole time.
I'm sorry, I'll try to make this story as linear as possible. So there was a lot of unrest, and you could just tell, like I felt watching, looking at the news, looking at Twitter, looking at local reporters who may not work for any media organization, but just report. Mm-hmm. Following them on Twitter, it was just like things were happening. And on Thursday night, so that's when the like major thing happened at the 3rd precinct. Like I had ordered pizza from Punch Pizza, this local place. And even on my run before going to pick it up, I was like, this is like, it does not seem right. Like things are not settled from this. Like those people should be arrested. And I was running around the neighborhood, and I like noticed that like things were boarded up. And then I was going to pick up this pizza at 7, and right as I was about to leave for go pick this up, they called me, and they're like, for the sake of our employees, we'll refund you. And I even thought about that on my run. I was like, is it safe for me to drive 1.5 miles to go get this? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I would say that the 3rd precinct where the major unrest started is about maybe 1.5 miles from me. It's about a 10-minute drive. It's definitely in a disadvantaged part of town. I'm trying to use the right politically correct words for this, but just that people have an understanding that there's been a lot of redlining like in other cities. It's just like not the most desirable place to live.
Sure.
So that happened, and I had not been sleeping a lot of the nights of the week. And then on Friday, they implemented the curfew to begin at 8 p.m. and they said the National Guard was coming, but you could also just tell it they weren't here yet, which I appreciate the governor's transparency, but they just weren't here. So how can you enforce a curfew when you don't have enough people? And I walked about probably like 1 mile to the 5th precinct, which is close to 2.5 blocks from my place. So I was with a group of friends, which I thought was safer. And you could tell at the time, any event that's not organized, it's gonna invite people who are not there for the right reasons. And so similar, I think, to Thursday, there were many people out just taking advantage of the situation, but there was still a large crowd, and the majority of it that were true protesters there supporting the Black Lives Matter movement. So that was interesting to see up close, because on the peripheral of that crowd, and again, this is not the majority of the people, but this is what the biased media or media will show to sensationalize it. I did see people pop open ATMs. People have removed their license plates from cars. People are just ready to take advantage of the situation. I saw people start a fire in the Wells Fargo. Like, I think just considering my, like, 3 stores that I went in the week before got burned down. One of them being the bank, which is like, oh, whatever, it's a bank. The post office in another store. Like, I'm not super affected by it, but the point is, like, people in the community are, and they have nowhere else to go. And also that the transit was shut down for quite a few days is really impactful to the community. We'll probably have to circle back on your question, but yeah, people are getting, I think overall now, everyone, and I'm sure it seems all over for the most part, is people are much more interested in politics and how we got where we are now.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Yeah. I mean, I imagine most of the people listening to this know what redlining is, but I know that there's a whole bunch of other people who would hear that word and have no idea all the impact that it's had on the history of our country. And yeah.
So I will add, since that weekend, I would say for a week and a half, it was, I think, just because of the situation, inviting people who both live here and maybe outside of here to use the protest as a cover to do, frankly, just crazy stuff. So most of the nights I was out till 2 or 3 on my block, and also connecting with other neighbors. And you would watch the National Guard roll by in a convoy of 8 vehicles. And then just, you would hear crazy stuff and people finding things of, fire starter things in the bushes, or like in trash cans. And then people would post photos of it on Nextdoor. There were 2 car fires about a week ago on the block behind my apartment. And then there was gunfire outside this local Black-owned restaurant that's been serving as a donation place. There's been, gunfire, like, more nights than not. And, it is all confirmed via eyewitness that the people who are doing this, they're all white people.
Yeah.
So, and you don't really see that. You only see, like, one mention of it in the newspaper or news stories. But it is important to focus on the movement.
Yeah, I agree. I wish that that's what more people were doing too. I feel like most of the people that I talk to, like, fully understand that, but every once in a while I log onto Facebook and it's just like, oh, people here think differently, and it's exhausting. Okay. Well, that, I didn't know most of that. I think I saw that, didn't you say that there was, like, a gas station, like, a block away from you too, that something was going on there? I might have made that part up. Oh, but you said, okay, so there were some nights that you would stay up and you were sort of like community watch, right? And then you would, like, alternate with your neighbors, is that right?
Yeah. So this was happening, I would say, from my understanding, my friends in other neighborhoods, like, if you were connected with people in your block, there were neighbors staying up. And I mean, other just, like, weird instances, like my friend in another neighborhood, he saw a car, like, their neighbor saw a car drive up, like, hit another car, like, tap another car, and then all 4 people in the car run out of the car and just leave the car there. And this neighbor walked up to it, and 30 seconds later, one person came back. It was a driver. It was a white female, like, jumped back in the car and drove off. And this is during curfew, so you have to wonder, like, why are these people out doing this? Yeah. And why are a lot of cars just driving around without their lights on? And then he also showed me a video. It was at a gas station that he had boarded up, that this person, and it's all recorded, he was, like, wearing his, like, company logo of his vest, and, like, you could see the guy's license plate. but this was a BP in the neighborhood, and this is in broad daylight, and he was purposely letting the gas run on the ground. And like people caught him doing that. So it's like, why is someone doing that?
Wait, so you said that was a VP? Is that what you said? Like
BP, like a BP gas station, a brand.
Gotcha.
But like for someone to openly just like let gas flow in a parking lot at a gas station and then get called out for it and just like drive off.
Yeah.
So
not ideal, not awesome intentions, doesn't seem.
Yeah.
Man. Well, I'm glad that it seems to have calmed down and that people seem to be focusing on like the productive parts of it for the most part now.
Yeah.
So you were or it was probably over Zoom, but you said that you were at the Minneapolis City Council meeting where they voted to defund the police. Did you know that was a possibility, that might even happen? It was not really on my radar that anything might move this fast. It was exciting.
Yeah, so I was there. So they had a meeting for the community last Sunday, so about a week ago. And I think on that Saturday, they had talked about voting to defund the police. So I don't know the whole timeline or backstory of that, but they have the majority of council members saying that they will try to defund the police, which is good to hear. I think from my perspective as a person who lives and votes here, it's like, how much sway does that mean? And what are they just paying lip service to the constituents who are rightfully voicing this concern? And so I went to this, they held this in a park outside in the afternoon last Sunday. And it was good to hear them talk about it. But at the same time, whether, some people can't go because they have kids, or the majority of people in the crowd, even though it is big, it's like 3,000 people. You see all these people at marches. It's like, how many of them are homeowner, like major taxpayers of any city? And what are their thoughts on it? And how words like dismantle, defund, and abolish are very slogan words. It's like, what does that truly mean? And how much can that be twisted and used for fear if no one fully understands it?
Yeah.
So the gist that I took away from the council meeting last with the audience was they're taking questions and comments and like feedback from citizens, and they're like, this is the email address, and getting together with my friends. I went with a group of like 10 friends. We all biked there. But I mean, overall thinking about it, it's like, isn't this ideally a public good? We know that the police, a lot gets shoved on their plate because, they're dealing with mental health calls, all these issues that like should go somewhere else. But being very analytical about it, and it's like, how much data is found on this? But it's like, I want to know how much of their time is spent doing this. Like, that's the first point.
To like get a breakdown of
like how many calls are going on, like how much time does it take from them to respond, what type of calls, right? Who are they going with? What's the outcome? Is it being resolved? Just to understand that what are they doing? And I think there's also been issues in the past about just transparency in general.
Yeah, sure.
I think from my perspective of looking at politics, it's like their union has a lot of power.
Yes.
And people need to understand that.
I've obviously spent a lot of time learning during this time also, although I would definitely say that this has been an interest of mine for a very long time. But I'm learning so much. I do this all the time. I get like ahead of myself and then I lose my actual train of thought. What did you just say? Sorry. Lindsay knows that. Sorry.
No, I honestly, I don't know what you were going to say. I thought I did.
Well, So I went to the meeting and they talked about, taking feedback, and which I think is great. Like, citizens are concerned.
Mm-hmm.
And I think from my perspective, it's like, even if this process moves forward, what can the city council truly do to defund the police and quote unquote abolish it in its current state?
So who does have power? Do we know?
I think the mayor has some power in that.
You're right.
My understanding, again, at very high level, is I always thought the mayor didn't have much power in the city. Like, the city council has more, but one of the actual points of power the mayor seat can have is in a relationship with the police.
In terms of budget, like budget allocations, or just
I believe in terms of budget allocation.
Okay. So I remember what I was going to say. You were talking about how you wanted more transparency and you wanted to see the details of how long it was taking to respond and what, like a demographic breakdown and stuff like that. What a couple people from my local Indivisible group, as well as a local community diversity group, sent a letter to, I think it was the mayor and the police chief, and just basically said that is like, we want to see a breakdown. We want more transparency. We want to see a breakdown, and we want to sit down and meet with you to talk about what policies you have now. But I think that the next step probably is meeting with somebody more like the mayor or somebody who has budget power to talk about like where those resources would be better allocated. And also, I'm very tired of talking to people who haven't spent any time trying to learn what it means to defund the police and what it means to defund the police.
So I feel like I've had some actually very useful conversations with people that, like, it's really hard for me to be like, I can tell you that Black Lives Matter, but like, I can't convince you of that, because it's like that meme of, I can't like tell you that other like people matter. Like, I can't understand why you don't understand that, but I can understand why you don't understand what defund the police means, and we can talk about it. Like, so I feel like actually, like, people that I know that I have differences of opinions with, like, that's been something that actually I've liked talking about. Like, I feel like it's been a little easier than some other things.
It's a pretty simple, it's like, do you want somebody with a gun to respond to a traffic stop? Or something like no, it's not necessary. Most of their calls are nonviolent. They don't get training on this other stuff. Without a doubt, it would be better handled by somebody else. And then, pretty much everybody goes, oh, that makes sense to me.
Right.
So it's easy to, thank goodness, but I do worry, and it hadn't really occurred to me until recently, that it's like, maybe we didn't decide that the slogan was going to be defund the police, but like, maybe it should have been like reimagine the police, or so that we don't scare, I don't know, suburban
reallocate funds.
Reallocate funds for the police.
I had a very taxing 1-hour text conversation with a friend who lives up north now, and he was very disillusioned with the 2016 election. And he was like, follow this media. Everyone said Hillary was going to win, and she didn't. And polling is terrible, and people who like voted for Trump didn't say that they were going to, but their silence, like, you knew by their silence that a lot of people were going to vote for him. And this conversation, turned into like, I think everyone has an opportunity to learn, but he only came back with like, oh, there's black on black crime, like, I'm Asian American, so like black hate Asians, and like there's historical stuff of that. And I kept asking, like, but what is your plan to move forward? That's the thing where it gets to like defund. The word is, it seems right away when you hear that, it's like, it's a negative because you're taking away something. So that's why I think that word scares people, or like they don't like that, because no one wants something existing, and to have like, here, something being taken away is obviously taken as negative. But and then it comes from a place of fear. Like, everyone is afraid. Both people who are white people who, like, don't touch any of this and think their police are going to be gone, protesters and people of color who are obviously afraid of police. Like, I don't interact with the police much, and I don't like them. Like, they're always there when you don't want them and not there when you need them.
Yeah.
And
they don't stop crime. They, like, show up after crime. They make you uncomfortable. Like, there's... I've never had, like, an encounter with the police where it's like, oh, I mean, obviously you shouldn't speed and stuff. Like, that's important. But, like, most of the time, what they're doing is, like, it's almost tedious. Where Morgan and I... Okay, so Morgan has dated a cop. I don't remember how long. But I went on a police ride-along in 2017 for 4 hours. And I'll talk about this more on that episode. But, like, we didn't help anybody the entire time. Like... Yeah. We just pulled over bikers who didn't have like their headlights on. It's like, what? And we didn't. It was okay, whatever. But
I had a little bit of fun naming, like, listing off to my husband every cop interaction I've ever had and, like, rating them.
Oh my gosh, you have a good story about a cop interaction too.
And I actually have several like smaller ones. Mm-hmm. But I was like, one time we were doing, like, a really long road trip, and I was driving, and I was like, I'm just getting, like, so tired. I was like, can we just switch? So we pulled off on, like, an exit ramp and just were gonna, like, switch around real quick, and a cop pulled up behind us with the lights on. I was like, motherfucker. I, like, just became enraged instantly. Mm-hmm. I was like, if we get in trouble for stopping on this, I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. And, like, instant panic, instant rage. And then the cop was like, came out. We were already out of the car. So I was like, oh my God, we're already out of the car. What do we do? Mm-hmm. And he was like, hey, I saw you guys, like, pull off real quick. Is everything okay? And I was like, yes. And he was like, oh, like, I thought maybe, it was late. It was, like, pitch black. It was the middle of the night. Mm-hmm. Like, I thought maybe, like, your car was broken or something had happened. And I was like, oh, whoa, wait, you were just gonna...
Are you serving and protecting right now?
You were gonna serve and protect me. And I was literally shocked. Like, I couldn't believe it. I was like, he was just gonna help us because he thought that something was wrong.
Oh, okay, well, so there's one good apple.
So I was like, why was I so surprised? Isn't that why? Like, yeah, just the fact that I was so surprised. Mm-hmm. I think I rated that like a 6 out of 10. Yeah.
I saw this on Twitter, so, like, take it with, like, that amount of honesty, integrity. But I saw a tweet from a Black woman who got pulled over by the police yesterday just to tell her she was pretty. Mm. It's like, ugh. No, like, you absolutely cannot use your power for shit like that. Fired, canceled, goodbye. Like, and that's not even, like, that was the end of her interaction. Like, she got away. But it's still gross and unacceptable. Blah. How else did that city council meeting, like, feel? Like, what was, like, the vibe there?
There were some poems read. Then there were just, like, different groups represented. I feel like most specifically my council person is a trans individual. So there was discussion of that too, and just, reiterating that they're included and important to the movement, which they are. Mm-hmm. But I think for me, I was just there to hear, like, what are the next action steps?
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's hard. Like, change doesn't come quickly, and it shouldn't. But I think, like, touching on what my friend said who lives up north, it's like, what are the next steps? And they can't be based in fear or anger, mm-hmm. like, and that's what people do.
Yeah,
naturally.
Well, also, we've been doing that for years. Like, that's what the crime bill was all about. Like, look what that did. So, no more of that.
And for all the people who are just, like, don't care at all about this because they're not affected, and I mean mainly white and living in the suburbs, it's like, okay, it's not your account, but you still should care. This is quote unquote a public good. It's the money we pay all these people. Like, we deserve to audit them.
Yeah, absolutely.
You
And
know,
the majority of a lot of budgets go, I mean, not majority, it's more like 40%. I think it's 39% in Chicago. But yeah, an exorbitant amount of money goes to the police. And yes, of course we should care about it. It's our money. I don't know if you saw, but the 500 billion, so $500 billion from the PPP loans, like Stephen Mnuchin is just not going to disclose it. He's saying it's proprietary, which isn't even a word that applies here. He's so stupid. But yeah, that's 500 billion. That's $500 billion of our taxpayer dollars, and it's going like completely unaccounted for. I don't know why people don't care about that. And then like, yeah, a huge number of your taxes go towards police departments, and they're not good at their jobs. So let's stop paying them so much. Like, you wouldn't, I don't know. You wouldn't keep throwing money at something that wasn't getting better. It's just silly. I have a so I texted Lindsay about this right before we started, but I was like, okay, how's this new rule? Give me your feedback. I would like both of your feedback on my new rule. My new rule is that if you're talking to somebody who knows more about race relations than you, and it's a simple rule, if you're talking to somebody who knows more about race relations, like, be quiet, listen to them. But when you're talking to people who know less about race relations than you, then you can't be quiet. Then you like have to. I feel almost like now it's like my responsibility to try to explain what's going on. This one's my favorite. Oh, come back.
You can't just name favorites like that, Katie.
They don't understand English. But I don't know.
I said I think it's a good rule, but people are stupid.
Yeah, but I think like I don't think that people are gonna adopt the rule immediately, but I feel like it's a helpful rule, like a helpful guide, because I hear a lot of people who are like, I just need to shut up right now, and a lot of people, and it's just like, well, I think it depends on who you're talking to, like, so yeah. Okay, rule. I think I'm gonna start. I'm gonna implement this rule, and I'm gonna let you know how it goes. And I guess the reason that I'm saying that is because I've written a 6-page single-spaced letter to an acquaintance from my old gym who's married to a police officer and says some pretty racist stuff on Facebook. So anyway, she doesn't know. She obviously has not done any research and says some real ignorant shit. And I've been to her house once, so I'm mailing her a letter. And if she doesn't read it, then whatever, but at least I tried.
Yeah.
I mean, Lila, I feel like you already do it. And from my, like, interactions with you one-on-one and in groups for the most part. So, do you agree?
That I talk about race, or?
So, like, when you have something important that other people, like, need to hear, you say it.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you're not one to be like, oh, it's not for this situation, or, it's
politeness,
like, if people need to hear it, like, you say it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you also,
That's right.
Yeah. So you already do it.
Yeah, Lila's no nonsense.
But also, like, you listen too. Obviously, you, like, listen and observe very closely as well, so.
Yeah. And I mean, I try to understand, like, for example, the person up north, like, I asked, like, where is this perspective coming from? And I was like, fine, write me a long email. Like, I don't want to do this in text. Like, I want to understand. And yes, I could, like, counterpoint in the email, probably fact by fact. But it's important to understand where people are coming from. And, like, sadly, their information is, like, probably skewed, like Fox News, or they have no personal experience, or they're one experience, and they base everything off that. Yeah. And it is very concerning.
Yeah, for sure. This is a
But I
person
think you
in
have to
Central
start
Illinois,
slow.
so you have to
yeah.
start slow. Is that what you
You
said?
have to start slow. Like when I try to point out one fact that it's that's important. Let's start there because there's so much out there. I mean, the reality is everyone's now. If you're paying attention, you're getting 400 years of history.
Yes.
Through a fire hose, and it's a lot to take in. And I'm sure for people who have no experience with race or racism, it's a lot. And I think going back to this person up north is he's a lot of his texts where he doesn't want to feel guilty or he feels victimized being born white. And I was just I don't know where that rhetoric is coming from. I'm not saying that. I think privilege, there's a lot of feelings surrounding it, but my example is for me, which isn't around race, but it's I acknowledge that I went to a private school that was very privileged. Not everyone has that opportunity. I don't feel guilty about it. There are pros and cons to it, but it is a fact of my upbringing.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, that's they're oh, that's snooty, you went to one, and there's a class system when you go to a private school as well. But I don't feel guilty about it.
Yeah. You just acknowledge
and I think I used to. Yeah. I had some opportunities, but definitely other people didn't.
Yeah. But it seems like that prepared you to I don't know, actually make positive change in your community, and then that's what you're doing. So you used that privilege to do what you're supposed to.
Yeah. And other people are and this leads to the book White Fragility, which is written by a white individual, and I'm conflicted about reading it, but apparently that's the one that everyone's starting with.
Okay, I'm really glad you brought that up because that was the book that I was going to send this girl. Also, I was going to send a letter and a book and recommend. So I have, and I don't know how she prefers to learn. I have a podcast I recommended, two YouTube videos, a book that I was going to buy her and send her. And then at that point, it's bitch, if you don't get it at this point, you're choosing to remain ignorant. It's not my fault. But I read How to Be Less Stupid About Race, which is written by a Black woman, but a Black woman who didn't really understand racism until she was older because she was also in this very religious. So she thought that people were treating her differently because she wore weird clothes and and it wasn't really until later that she realized that she was being discriminated because of race. So it was really interesting. It was really good. I might send, but I'm worried that she'll receive a book that says how to be less stupid about race and think I'm calling her stupid, which I do feel, but probably not. So I don't know. There's a lot of good ones out there. I'll do some more research. But that was the one I was gonna pick, because that's what she has. She has white fragility, and it's dangerous because you can weaponize it, and so, I don't know, white people. And the more, so yeah, everybody's educating themselves about the past too. The more I learn about white women in the past, it's just oh my God, you could have done so much good, and you chose to do not any of that. It's embarrassing. And I'm glad that I like wearing masks because I don't have to smile at people anymore that I don't feel like smiling at. And 53% of white women voted for Trump. So that means that you should at least not be smiling at half the white women you pass. So
that's true. Yeah. That's how I feel about masks. I'm oh, I don't have to smile anymore. This is great.
I don't have to pretend to care. Okay, we mentioned it a little bit earlier, but you have a story about an encounter in your past with the Minneapolis Police Department. Do you want to give us so there's a full story about it, a longer version on a different podcast. What's the name of that podcast? Risk?
It's called Risk Live. It's
okay.
Live from Minneapolis 3. The episode is 948.
948? Okay.
Yep.
All right. So if you like this teaser, go listen to the whole episode. It's such a good story. But do you want to tell us about what happened?
There are 3 stories in the podcast. Yep. And mine is at the end.
Okay.
You might want to fast forward through it. But
they're all
so you get
also
there.
interesting.
The
Yeah.
what?
They're all also really interesting stories, but just
But they're not as interesting
not
as Lila's.
this one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll give the brief overview, but it is overall a really funny story.
Yes.
I was working from home. The police came. It was technically the Hennepin County Violent Offenders Task Force, and
In
someone
your apartment you're in right now, right?
in the apartment I'm in right now, someone had shipped drugs to my address because I get a lot of packages, because who doesn't nowadays?
Right.
And we went through this 2-hour ordeal of them asking me dumbass questions, and then them turning my place upside down and realizing no way can it be this small woman that I was not connected to any drugs. But the questions they asked, I was just like, this is insane. This is offensive and insane. It sounds like there's a program offering to pay someone's rent. And I'm like, oh, can I sign up for that? Based on the questions they asked, they're like, oh, who pays your bills? And I'm like, I do. And they asking it multiple ways. I'm like, oh, is someone offering to pay my bills? What?
You're like,
their program? And who comes in and out, and just dumbass questions. And they reveal that someone had shipped my place drugs. And I was like, yeah, it's not me. It's someone in this building. Obviously, there's 10 other people who live in this building. If you had just watched at the door, who picked up the package.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, this relates to, I don't even think if you would call it a case now, right? Breonna Taylor. I do think, the overall story of what happened to me is funny because they're so dumb. And when that happened, I was like, damn it, this is taxpayer money. They sent 8 police officers,
right.
battering rams, guns drawn.
Yeah, it was intense, right?
Day. It was very intense. And I think regardless of race, it was just me at home and my 2 cats. If they didn't like my answer, they would have held me and taken me away. And if I looked any way threatening to them, they would have done something worse or could have shot me. And that's terrible.
Yeah. I remember when because they took your cell phone away. I remember when I don't know if you called me from Google, and I was terrified and enraged. I think maybe you had maybe your adrenaline had gone down already because you told it in such a calm, logical manner. But I remember my heart racing as you were telling me, and that it was just
I remember you telling me and my heart racing, and I was hearing secondhand.
Yeah, I just the idea of they had you alone in your apartment. Several, I don't know if they were all men. In my head, they are. But just fully grown men with weapons, and you're by yourself with cats. But that was really, I feel a terrible situation that didn't need to be that way.
Do you know if they ever figured out who it was?
Well, when it ended, later that week, I got my phone back, and they're like, well, don't tell anyone because this is still an ongoing case. This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Don't tell anyone because we're dumb.
And they're like, we're doing some IP internet tracing. I was like, no, you're not. You blew it.
If you just sat there and waited for a little bit, you could have nailed it.
And I requested pretty soon after that the report, and I
through FOIA.
Want to request it through. I think I just I did it online, so I don't know. I should look into the different avenues, but it's it was a very brief 1-page thing with a few things redacted.
Okay.
But I should see if anything developed.
Yeah,
but it was definitely someone in my building. Well, probably the person who lived across from me at the time.
Did they move out?
They did after I spoke to my landlord.
Nice. Bye.
Of
So
course
did they
move out.
or get kicked out?
It was, they weren't allowed to renew their lease.
Mm.
I mean, it could have also been some other people in my building, but that made the most logical sense at the time.
Yeah. They would probably, have the most awareness of your like comings and goings. Like that's why, they picked you, right? You get a lot of packages and you're not home all day. So usually you're not home all day. So,
Yeah, correct.
Smart, kind of, but
yeah. I think just thinking about the cops, how like they signed the warrant, like the judge signed it, and then these like 8 people like suited up, got their guns, and were probably all like, "Oh my God, we're gonna get this person. We're gonna hop in our van and like go to their door." And then it's just like, that's so much money. That's probably my money that like is funding
your own
this.
money.
It like pisses me off. Like everyone I tell this story should be pissed off. Like it's
how long do you think
dumb.
How long were they there?
They were there for like 2 hours, and they
and let's
turned over my
assume
plate.
Each of them makes $25 an hour at least, probably.
Yeah.
There were 8 people there for 2 hours. That
Plus
is
the hour of getting ready. And
and all their shit,
briefing.
all their riot gear or tactical gear to handle Lila and her 2 cats. Yeah, no, it's absurd. That's a good story. Lindsay, do you want to tell any cop stories? I mean, besides you do not have to. I'm just curious. You said you had a bunch.
I'll tell a quick minor one of just where I like, it's the one that I use when I am having conversations about the meaning of defunding the police. I got rear-ended on a really busy freeway and called 911, and I think 1 or 2 cops showed up, and it was like, so it's loud. It's like full freeway traffic. I'm on the side of the road. My car was literally like, over top of the person's car who rear-ended me. And the cop basically like bullied me because he was like, okay, like go away, like drive away, like we have all your information. And I was like, I don't think I can, like my back tires aren't on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, we have to clear the road, like get out and you can call later. Like,
how? What did they want you to do?
I mean, so the car did, like, it's front wheel drive, which, so yeah, I mean, it did, I could drive off the other car, but I was like, that's not who I needed or wanted in that moment.
Yeah.
Like, no, like, didn't ask about me,
Mm-hmm.
like, belittled the person who rear-ended me because her English was not very good. Like, it's not the right person for it.
But it is the kind of person who's attracted to the job.
Right. So, like, that's like the one that I use that I don't mind telling people.
Like it's a totally harmless story, and it still is a shitty interaction.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
A
lot less dramatic than Lila's, but
yeah. Wow. Man, I hate stories like I don't know. But that is have either of you watched the show Unbelievable? I've talked about it on the podcast before, and I hope listeners aren't tired of hearing me talk about it.
On Netflix?
It's on Netflix. It's really good. I mean, it's really heavy, and the first episode is really hard to watch. It's about a young girl who gets raped, but it does, and it's based on a true story too, I think. I mean, it's probably based on a lot of true stories.
Yeah.
But it does a really excellent job of just showing like what you would want in a situation where you'd been traumatized like that, and then what you end up getting. And it does have a really nice juxtaposition of like a male cop who does a really, really bad job. Like such a bad job that it goes unpunished. And then a female cop who like gives it, just is present and makes sure that she's okay, and like does like warm handoffs so that she's not just like sending her on her way, just like what you would need in a situation like that. And it's like, oh yeah. so let's get social workers. I mean, like some police are like that, but you get lucky if you get one of those. It's like not the norm in any way. Okay, I also wanted to ask, because I thought this was very creative of you, can you talk a little bit about what you've been doing on Instagram with the matching donations from your work?
Oh, yes. I mean, so my company is pretty large globally. I want to have 70,000 employees. In my office, there's 250 employees. So every employee gets a $1,000 match. If they give to that's the max that they will fund. If you give to a charitable organization, basically has to be a 501c3, if I got that right, and not political. But I matched out my $1,000, and then I just reached out to a coworker, and for the most part, no one is taking advantage of this match. But that is basically, in my mind, just free money that can be used. So I just reached out to people that I know or put it out there that, if they plan to give money, just to give it through me, and then I could double how much they were giving. So far, raised about $3,100.
Yeah, that's awesome. And like, sorry, go ahead.
And it turns out, I think, just to add, people should look into their company if they have that, or they should be asking their company. I think to add on to that, I think the next change for me is, obviously we're not in a great space economically, and probably won't be for a while, but you saw some people, depending on the field, if they're able to, ask for better benefits or, pressure companies to be more eco-friendly. I think pressuring companies to be involved in this, or something more than putting out a stance that says we're anti-racist. Companies can have a stance on this.
They can put their money where their mouth is.
Yeah.
I thought that was so creative and such a good idea. Were you hesitant at all to start that project? I don't know. I don't know. I thought it was kind of brave because you kind of had to put yourself out there, but also you were signing up for more work. But are you glad you did it?
I'm really glad I did it. I mean, I don't mind volunteering. I like it. But yeah, it was definitely volunteering for a project.
Yeah.
But yeah, people need to, it was just, in my mind, it wasn't actually that hard. It's just taking time. Which is fine.
Yeah, I think that's everybody has to find some sort of project and commit yourself to it. Just try to make it one that you like.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the part that don't know if you want to leave in or take out, so it's up to you. But I was going to ask how it is being friends with the hot mayor's wife. Or, actually, really the only thing that I wanted to, I sent Lindsay, did you see the video of him dancing? We can cut it out. Wait, what?
I saw it.
Yeah.
You saw it? Okay, I think Lindsay's seen it. It was so funny. But really what I was texting Lindsay about is I've seen so many, I'm glad he is out and about in the community, but why, he keeps his mask around his chin and I don't understand, and it makes me so upset, and I just wish he would put it on because he keeps taking it off for photo ops, and I'm like, hey man, when you're in a photo op, you're within 6 feet of a person and you gotta put your mask on.
I'll have to look at this. I'll probably want to cut out anything about Sarah.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We don't have to talk. Hey, Ben, that last question probably take off the air. Thank you.
That's so, because that is the one where I said, I was like, oh, just make sure that Lila knows that this doesn't have to go on there word for word.
Yeah, I honestly, I didn't really think we'd talk about that or the Minneapolis Police Department one, but I don't know why, because I guess you've done that on a different podcast.
I'm hoping to see Sarah tomorrow. I think the overall thing is, like, she's always tried to be separate from her husband.
Yeah.
Like, she's like, oh, like, something's in the news. Like, talk to him about it. Like,
Yeah.
she works full-time. She's going to law school and just, like, really tried to, I mean, obviously she's married to him.
Yeah. They're, like, very autonomous people, though. Like,
yeah.
From what I mean, I don't obviously know Jacob, but
you know Sarah? Or,
yeah, from high school.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, from Lila's high school.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the last question that I usually ask, if you want to share, if you have like a preferred form of interacting with democracy for any of our listeners who are like looking for ideas, and matching funds is like one really super good idea. Like I know I've talked about it, but that was so smart. But are there any other ways that are your preferred ways of interacting with democracy?
I mean, people need to pay attention to local elections. I'm sure you probably say it on here all the time. And this goes back to the conversation with, like, my friend up north. He was like, what are you talking about local elections? Like, you don't, like, the local election up here doesn't matter to you. And I'm like, but it matters to you. Like, even if Trump wins, who I think he will, I think he'll win again. It's like, locally, it is important to you what happens. And, like, the fact that people don't realize that, or, like, they can't take, you're not going to get all the information, but to take 20 minutes, like, oh, local election is coming up, like, I need to vote. Because, like, a non-vote, not doing anything is also a vote. It's saying that, like, you're okay with the status quo.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, especially for my friends who is, like, you have stuff going on in your life, but you also don't have kids. Like, sorry, you have to not go to happy hour early. Like, seriously, get it together.
It's a
local
civic duty.
Yes. And especially, talking to people and older people, mostly like older white males. Like, well, I didn't vote, and I do get angry because like women didn't get a chance to vote. Like, they still kill other people in other countries for trying to vote, and then like they get defensive and get like, they're like, oh my god, I don't know. Yeah. I feel like it's exhausting to try to convert people being like, this is important when their life is like so little affected by it. But I don't know what to say now besides like, well, we're going to deal with it in 10 years or 20 years or 30 years.
Yeah.
And your kids are going to have to deal with it. So either suck it up and deal with it now.
Yeah.
Or like, I don't know, maybe they'll come out to your house and the birds can burn it down. That's your problem.
Did I didn't
That's what they're concerned about.
Yes.
I mean, pretty much only that.
I couldn't get my mom's medication the other week because all the Walgreens in like a however many mile radius closed on like 3 the day that there was like 2 protests. Nothing happened. Like, people are I don't know. I called the Walgreens, and the pharmacist sounded so frantic because I didn't realize they were closing at 3. I thought they were closing at a real time. And I was like, hey, my mom needs these today. Like, what's up? And she was like, well, we're closing in 3 minutes, and so are all the other. And it's like, oh, okay, well,
I'll just teleport there real quick.
I guess I'll just fuck off then. Like, I don't know. People are like hysterical. But so yes, everything about what you just said is true. Local elections affect you more than non-local elections. Actually, one of our least listened to episodes was about what happened in 2019 in Virginia. But if you haven't listened to that, I really recommend going back and listening to it because they had a Democratic governor in 2019. They flipped both houses blue, and then they passed a shit ton of progressive laws. And the only reason that the Minneapolis City Council was able to pass the defunding the police resolution was because they have a bunch of progressives on the council. They have a supermajority. So, like, of course, voting in local elections matters. It matters even more than voting in federal elections. But and especially since our federal government is so fucked up right now, the only place where anything's going to get done is on like a state and local level. So basically, you're right. Congratulations.
I think I didn't talk last time about my landlord, did I? My old landlord?
No.
He used to email he had a lot of properties, He used to email everybody like with like a week's heads up of when you could register, like the last time you could register to vote in the next election, and then like a week's heads up for when the election was. And then at the bottom, it was like, oh, like whatever I can do to help you get there. Like if you need childcare, if you need a ride, if you don't know where your polling place is, like obviously I know all these neighborhoods, so I can whatever you need. And I was like, oh man, like can everybody do that? Like I don't know if anyone did like asked him for anything, but
That's so
I was
cute.
like, that's like he was like, oh, I have like this small platform. It's probably maybe like 30 households. But knowing that a lot of them are young, like in college, or, you know, people who are renting, like transient, maybe not from the area. It's like if like everyone could do that for like whatever their scope is.
Right, exactly. That's what everybody's job is. Everybody is a micro influencer now. Like that's, I don't know. It's like embarrassing to think that way almost, but like that's what, I don't know. That's how it gets better.
Also, shout out, that person is Alana from Broad City's partner's uncle.
What?
Do you watch Broad City?
Yes.
Alana.
Okay.
Her partner's uncle.
All right.
And so I was like, I basically know her.
Yeah, no, you're famous. That's excellent.
Yeah. You can cut that out if you don't want to put that in.
Nope. Then leave it in. And oh God, the other reason that it's so important to vote this year is because it's a census year. And that's how Republicans fucked up gerrymandering for the last 10 years. So if they win again, for the most part, unless people have passed ballot initiatives to do independent redistricting, then whoever wins gets to draw the new district maps. And if it's Republicans, they don't do it fairly. And I mean, sorry, so there's some democratically gerrymandered places in Illinois, but like it's not at all to the same level as what Republicans do. Which Lindsay and I talked about last time. Lindsay's an expert now. Wait,
Can't wait to hear about it.
Okay. Well, those were all the questions that I had. Did either of you have anything? I guess we'll start with Lila. Is there anything else that you wanted to share with this enormous platform that you now have?
I don't know. I mean, voting is important.
Yeah.
I was just thinking back, I had my birthday party, like the last one I had, it ended with me telling everyone to go vote.
Nice.
As a birthday present to Lila.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, pay attention to what media you're watching and what lens they're putting on everything.
Yeah. Be
Also,
skeptical.
like everything is political, even if you don't want it to be. Where you spend your money is political. Look at the ordinance, you know, shopping at Home Depot, that's political.
When you could choose Lowe's instead. Like, yeah, you're either doing damage or you're doing good. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it does, it comes back to Citizens United, which is shitty, but...
That's the episode that comes out at midnight tonight about Citizens United. It's actually really long. It's really embarrassingly long because there's so much shitty stuff to talk about. So yeah, you're right. It does all come back to Citizens United, which is really hard to overturn now because Gorsuch and Kavanaugh are on the court. Yeah, and so it'll probably come down to ballot initiatives on the state level, which Montana has. Like, we could do it, but it's annoying and it's hard because our federal government is so messed up right now. So hopefully we have democracy later to fix it.
Yeah. Which, all of this can be overwhelming, but it's like even in the small things, like, I mean, I've always done this at the farmer's market, like the smallest thing. It's like, oh, okay, I'm going to go shop at a personal color stand versus someone who's white and probably going to be fine. I don't know.
Yeah. What about you, Lindsay? Do you have any wisdom to drop on us this week?
I think I dropped it all already. Everything.
That can't possibly be true, but okay. I'm sure you have a lot more wisdom. Okay, well, I'm gonna sign off, but don't hang up. I'm just gonna stop recording. Okay. Okay, well, thank you both for joining us this week, and it was very fun to talk to you, and I hope to get updates about how everything's going in the future, so thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, talk to you guys later.
Bye.
Bye! Thank you guys so much for listening to For Your Misinformation. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast, and if you like it, give us a rating and a review. It helps us find more listeners, and the more of us there are, the better.
And make sure you're following along on Instagram and Twitter at FYMI Pod.
Shout out to Kyle Dibdahl for the intro and outro music, Hope Dye for the podcast art, and Ben Schlofelt for the audio production.
We come out with new episodes every Monday.